I'm Mina Malik Hussain, and you're watching The Coffee Table. And you know, we love to geek out on this show, and today is a show like no other because I'm going to blow your minds in just 1 minute. So in 1961, did you know that Nobel laureate Abdus Salam set up the Space and Upper Atmosphere Research Commission, which is called SUPARCO, still exists today, in 1961. And within a span of 9 months, Abdus Salam and his team of geniuses put together Rehbar 1, which was a rocket that in 1962, Pakistan launched into outer space. Now, it's very cool that we launched a rocket into outer space, but what is even more fantastic is that this was no ordinary feat. Launching that rocket meant that Pakistan became the first in developing countries, the first country in South Asia, and the 10th in the world to launch a vessel into outer space in 1962, which is amazing and has blown my mind completely to think that at that point we were so far ahead of the curve. The first country in South Asia, the 10th in the world. There are a lot of countries in the world. The ranked number 10 is astounding. And between the 60s and the 70s, SUPARCO developed and launched 200 rockets into space, which is a fantastic start to our kind of space odyssey. But clearly, we have run into snags along the way, but it doesn't diminish how important, you know, the STEM subjects are and the sciences are, and how exciting it is, and how, you know, I feel like we've had such a strong start. And I want to talk about what is happening on the ground today for STEM in Pakistan. And we're going to be talking today to two wonderful people who are doing all sorts of fascinating things with science and space, exploration-ish, and also the connection between Lego and robotics. So I'm delighted to welcome virtually on set today Zartaj Waseem, who is a software engineer. She's an edtech entrepreneur. She is the national organizer for the World Robot Olympiad. She is the first Pakistani judge for the first Global Challenge, which is an Olympic-style robotics competition. And she is the CEO and co-founder of the Pakistan Space Science Education Center. And it is as cool as it sounds. And my second guest, also virtually joining me, is Nahyan Farooq, who is also a co-founder and the Chief Design Officer of the Space Science Education Center. He is also a member of the Space Generation Advisory Council. This is very intriguing, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation about science. Yay! Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you so much, Mina, for having us on the show.
As you can see, I'm very excited because I'm basically a massive science geek at heart. And finding out about this rocket really just, Zartaj, blew my mind because look at where we began. That is amazing. And I know that SUPARCO is still functional, but now it's more to do with weather and sort of satellites that we launch with the help of, you know, Chinese launches and things like that. And we are developing satellites, but it's all mostly weather-related, you know, things. So tell me, what led you to set up the PSSEC?
Okay. So basically, yes, Pakistan did start off with a very good start with the rocket that you mentioned. What led me to start PSSEC is, you know, basically I'm a software engineer, and I was working in the corporate sector for a good 10 years. And then, you know, I had my kids, and, you know, being the woman, how when you start a family, you're supposed to take care of your kids. So I sat home for a while. After that, when I started to think about going back to work, I was a little hesitant because, you know, in the technology field, you say that, you know, technology advances very fast. So I was feeling that I may not know what is going on today. So
that's true.
Underestimating the job of a school, I just started off with a school and I started teaching. So I was teaching computer science to students, and that is from where it actually, the STEM education journey, I would say, started. So STEM, for the viewers, I would just elaborate, it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And that these subjects are taught in a blended teaching and learning method, and also project-based learning methodologies. So there's a lot of teaching methodologies which are used in the developed countries today. Those methodologies come into play. And the idea is very simple, and that is to increase the comprehension of students, to increase or enhance the learning outcomes of whatever you are learning.
Yeah.
So then what happened was that over there in that school, I got a chance to explore robotics. And that is where Lego comes into play.
Yeah.
And I introduced, so, Lego we know from our childhood, right?
Absolutely.
We're all very familiar with the Lego kits. But when it came to programming a Lego, that was very different and very, very fascinating.
That's really exciting. Yeah. And that's something that I want to have. Don't tell me just now because I'll save it for later. No, but it's so, I just love it. It's so good. I'm just having a hugely fantastic time. So, Nahyan, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, welcome to...
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here.
So tell me, you are the Chief Design Officer at PSSEC. So what does that mean? What does design mean when it comes to science and STEM?
Since most of our courses are geared towards students, what we have to do is we have to sit down and put ourselves in children's shoes and then plan out all our activities. So I take that role. I put myself in children's shoes and I just start thinking like a child, right? This will excite me, this won't. And then I just design all the courses and design all the activities according to whatever I feel, whatever our team feels that would excite kids. So that's how the design factor comes in.
That's really cool. And what's your average age range for the kids that the organization works with?
So we're targeting students who are from grade 3 all the way up till university.
Oh.
So we're targeting a really broad range of students. And we have quite a few different programs that we're running that cater to these students as well. So we're targeting through robotics, we're targeting through hands-on science activities, and other programs that we're not going to talk about at the moment, but quite a few different things.
So, I think there's also this idea that a lot of times activity-based or project-based learning is something that's sort of generally considered to be something appropriate for younger children, especially if you're not in a baccalaureate kind of program, when you're more mainstream program, then, it's seen as kind of babyish. That, okay, you're learning by playing and learning by doing. But it's really interesting that you guys have courses that go up to college level, university level students, because those are much older students. But the model, I imagine, is more or less the same.
So the idea is something that we believe very firmly at PSEC is that you can only learn about science so much through books, but then you have to get your hands dirty. You can call it learning by playing, you can call it just playing, you can call it project-based learning, whatever stamp or whatever sticker you want to put on top of it. But our firm belief is that you can only learn about science so much through books. Then you have to get your hands dirty so you understand the concept, so you understand what's going on and why is it happening.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, again, I feel like when we think of the sciences, and maybe Zirtaj, you can sort of jump in here, a lot of the times it's about sort of physics, biology, and chemistry, and then there's a certain kind of standard lab work that you do, and it's all become kind of fairly sort of process-based. Well, okay, you learn this, then you do this, and it just kind of really blah. And this is where the sort of, how does this new approach to learning the sciences, because I know that STEM is a thing now, so maybe like for people watching, just to kind of elucidate on what does it mean to be thinking of all of these different things together?
So basically, what we do is, the approach that we use, it is STEM and project-based learning, as you said. It is about actually implementing it. A lot of STEM institutes are there in Pakistan as well and worldwide, but we have to see how many of them actually sit down and design activities that are focusing on these 21st century skills. So for example, if I talk about logical thinking, that's a very basic, sort of skill that you would, hear about, okay, logical thinking. But how do you develop logical thinking?
Yeah.
So that is where coding and programming comes into play. So I have I've led robotics teams. I have been to robotics competitions internationally. I've taken teams abroad. What I find interesting, and I found interesting I judge as well. I'm a judge as well. So what I find interesting was that students who would struggle in academic subjects. So for example, they would not be good at English or math and science in classroom, like learning from books, they would excel in the robotics and the arts classes and the computer science classes.
Wow.
That was something that made me think that why is that so? And that was consistent across grade levels, across multiple batches that I was teaching.
Yeah.
That led me to think that these students do not lack intelligence in any way or creativity in any way. It's just that they can't study from books, probably.
Yeah.
And that is what we see today. We have all digital learners. We talk about children not being focused. We talk about children not engaged in the classroom. But what is going on in the classroom?
Yeah.
We need to think about our teaching methodology. And STEM is something that is giving kids the way to shine. I have kids, success stories. I have a kid who was with me in my team in grade 4 in the school where I am. Now he's in grade 10. The confidence that he has gained and now the programs that he's in, he's a changed person completely because he got to express himself at his own pace. He was learning in a different way because I don't. So when I'm in a robotics classroom or training room, I would not make the kids, okay, do this that I've told you. I'd be like, we're exploring together. Yeah. And that is the approach at PSEC. We let the people explore. And I will not only say kids, we let our, even our educators are from universities and they're active students.
Yes,
we give them the liberty to run the show. Yes.
Absolutely. Like there's no age
they learn
for
so
this.
many skills.
That's amazing. I want to talk more about this, but we're going to take a very quick break. So stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking STEM and I love it. We are joined today by Zartaj Ahmed and Nahyan Farooq from the Pakistan Space Science Education Center. And this is such a fascinating conversation. So Zartaj, before the break, we were talking about how it's also such an amazing opportunity for educators to learn different methodologies to use in the classroom. And I feel that a lot of science teachers or STEM teachers are also we are all products of our education, right? So if we can find these different ways to connect the idea of being creative with the sciences, because again, I think it's one of those things where even students probably think that, oh my gosh, reading the sciences is so boring. And you have to do a lot of math and, horrible. But here we are with so much potential for artistic and creative expression.
Right, that's true. And I'll just, I think in this, finding out these insights was important because I have worked in the school. And I think that job that I just... underestimated, I would say, was that, because, I was from the corporate sector, I told you. So I kind of underestimated that, it's a half-day job. Okay, I'll be able to manage my kids and all. But then I realized that if I look at it, it's truly a full-time job. I was so much involved in the process. And I had all the challenging students. So I don't call them weak students. I call them challenging students that challenge the teacher. They all used to opt for computer sciences. And I had to deal with them. I had to make them learn. So that was something that made me design a robotics curriculum. And after that, I'm talking about 2011. When in schools, there was no concept of robotics. And then I went on to establish this institute, which was called Robotics Labs. And that was the first STEM Institute of Pakistan. I was one of the founding team members. And that is where I had met Nahyan. And Nahyan had come over there as an intern. He had finished his A levels, and that's how I met him. And then he went on to pursue his education in Australia. And when he came back from there, so I'll let Nehan talk about his Australia experience and the experience with Victorian Education Department. But that's when he came back, and we thought of giving STEM a new way and a new meaning by introducing space science. Because space science is something that caters to a lot of branches of sciences, like you just said. And it's not only physics, chemistry, and biology. It's microbiology. It's biotech now. It's astrophysics and so many other branches. And all of them very nicely come under space science. So we get a broader, frame to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll let Nehan talk about, how he, ended up at Victorian Space Science Education Center.
Yeah, over to you, Nehan. Take it. But yes, tell me all about that, because space science is so intriguing, and I love the idea of just even getting into space science. Like, it's so exciting. And I want to talk about Mars.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very exciting. So in 2014, I joined I was still studying at university. I joined a place called the Victorian Space Science Education Center.
Yeah.
And I remember this vividly. The first time I went there and the first step I took inside BSEC, I said to myself, I think I have to bring this back to Pakistan.
Yeah.
Because the setup that they have in Victoria and Melbourne is brilliant. Yeah. They've got a huge simulated surface of Mars over there, where you can wear a flight suit and a helmet and a backpack and everything, and you can go. Very, very fascinating. And that's when I just said, you know what, I really have to bring this. So I think it was winters 2014 that I came back to Pakistan for my holidays. And I had a chat with Zardaj, and I was like, listen, I think we need to start working towards this angle, because people are eventually going to get tired of STEM education in Pakistan with just robotics, just Lego again and again and again.
Yeah.
And being the maverick that she is, she said, sure, why not? Let's go for it. Because we like to torture ourselves. So we said, why not? So for 4 years, it was a very good wait for 4 years. After that, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, in April, we did our first workshop at the British Council Karachi Library. And the rest, honestly, as cliche as it sounds, the rest is history.
So how has the response been? Do you feel like there is this interest in young people and even older people, I'm sure, in space science? Because again, like Zartaj said, it's a lot of strands that are sort of coming together, and a lot of them are kind of off the beaten track. For example, astrophysics, people are studying that? Is there an interest now? Are people getting into it more?
The reason why you don't see people getting into it, because there's no knowledge about it.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring this into the mainframe. We're trying to bring it into the limelight.
Yeah.
There is a lot of passion for space science. Because there's a lot of it's just shrouded in mystery. That's the beauty of space. When you talk about space science, you're like, oh, wow, okay, what do we do in space? Are there any aliens? And you have all these weird questions, which are not really weird questions, but they're fun questions.
Yeah.
And we're there to not really answer them, but we're there to help you find or look for answers to your questions. That's how we're helping students over here. And there is a ton of excitement and a ton of excitement and a ton of interest in space science, especially when they see us in our flight suits. The first thing that we get is, are you guys astronauts?
Yeah.
I say to them, no, I'm not yet, but soon I will be. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah. That would be amazing. I want to get into a flight suit because I find it so fascinating. But at the same time, it's sort of bittersweet, really, because, I started the show with this idea because, like Suparko, for example, a lot of physicists from universities in Pakistan and University of Punjab, for example, were really pushing for this kind of research to happen. And we did make that kind of progress. And Zartaj, like as an educator, do you feel like one sort of reason why that sort of interest waned was because people weren't sort of reading these sciences anymore in that sort of interim period from like maybe the 70s to now, which seems odd because, we seem to also be a country obsessed with studying science. But then this is like one huge part of physics and research that has seemed to just kind of fallen through the cracks.
You're right. What I have to say in this regard is that we don't inspire these kids. You remember what age were you made to select your subjects? What would you study for later years? That's in grade 8.
Yes.
Now imagine a child of grade 8. What can they think about? Games. These days it's only games, things like that.
Yeah.
We need to inspire the kids. We need to create awareness, as Nehan just mentioned, that space science and astrophysics and all of this will not be known. In 2011, we wouldn't have heard of the mechatronics engineering degree in Pakistan. Not in a lot of universities, maybe one or two, the top universities might have it. But then it came because there was robotics happening, right? At school level with Lego, no matter what. But we're talking about teaching engineering at the school level, right? Who talks about engineering at the school level? Nobody, right? With STEM, it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And technology is a tool. You need it for all subjects. We're a part of the National Incubation Center, Karachi. We're a startup company.
Yeah.
The startup ecosystem is evolving. Now, a lot of parents and people come to me and ask that why are you teaching space science? What is the scope of space science in Pakistan?
This is
and
a very good
I'm not
sort of
teaching
question.
space science. Yeah. And I'm
A lot
sure
of
you
parents
will
are
have
very
it in mind.
concerned. Yes, and a lot of parents are really learned, and it sounds so sort of, at that age where children are so full of potential, it feels like such a sort of dispiriting question that parents ask. And what's the use of this? And one is like, the quest for knowledge. But yes, carry on.
Also because, we have used space science, and as Nehan mentioned, that people always want something new, particularly kids. They don't play with the same toys. After a week, the new toy is an old toy, right? So we're living in a world where things are rejected very quickly. Space science is something that inspires everyone. It is attractive, fascinating, cool,
Yeah,
so everybody wants to be in it.
Everyone wants to get into
when
a
you
space.
want-
We have to take a very quick break here, but we'll come back to this fascinating conversation. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We've been talking to Zartaj Ahmed and Nahyan Farooq from the Pakistan Space Science Education Center. I keep looking down on my notes because I don't want to muck it up. So before the break, Zartaj, we were talking about how actually doing the sciences and doing STEM is an amazing way, and it is actually an amazing sort of gateway for children to not only kind of harness an incredible amount of creative and science potential, but also can be a springboard to doing really well in a variety of sort of, job situations, which is what a lot of parents do think about when they're thinking about education for their kids. So actually, it's like a win-win situation for everybody.
That's true. And that is why I had earlier mentioned in my conversation that the educators who we have, they are actually active university students. They're still pursuing their degrees.
Yeah.
And we are training them on these 21st century skills by, having them teach in the classroom or in that setting or conduct trainings with us. And they learn a lot. We have quite a few educators who have told us how it has benefited them. It's not only about training them. We have these young people engaged with kids because they're also creative, right?
Yeah.
We have kids who have come to us and said that, they simply love the sessions, the way they're conducted, because kids want to be hands-on.
Yeah, they
and
do.
That is truly, and and I'm not only talking about kids from from the elite schools, as we like to call them, although I really don't like that term, but that is what we call them.
That's a whole show in itself.
But yes, but we have been to Thar. You can't imagine that we've been there thrice. You know how those people are, how those kids are. The first thing that comes to your mind is that Thar mein, there's no water and there's no food. Those are the two things that come to your mind, and that it is extremely hot.
Yeah.
But when we went there through Thar Foundation, we collaborated with them. We went there. Honestly, we didn't know their language, which was Sindhi and some offshoot of Sindhi.
Yeah.
But the only way we communicated with them was through their teachers' help, through illustrations, through explaining to them, and we took the tablets and all, made them understand what we were talking about, made them do the science activities. And then finally, in December 2019, we did Thar's first Maker and Science Expo. And all the projects over there were made by the kids.
That's
and we were
amazing.
also shocked, Mina, yes, that, these kids who have difficulty understanding completely what we're saying, and we have difficulty, but there's a medium through which you can communicate. And that goes to show a lot as to why these methodologies are really, really effective.
Yeah, and how many amazing ideas are out there, and so many children who are full of potential. And I feel like, Nahyan, maybe you can sort of jump in here, is that we do seem to also in Pakistan do a lot of sciences, and then a lot of people do a lot of research as well. But somehow that research doesn't really translate into active solutions either. And who better to think about the challenges that Pakistan faces than Pakistanis and Pakistani scientists to find answers to a lot of things. Like Zartaj mentioned, if access to drinking water, for example, or inventing something that could help with that, so on and so forth. Like, do you feel like there is that sort of gap that needs to be addressed here?
Absolutely. I think you've raised such a crucial point here, and I think it's so important to address this. For some reason that we've, from our experiences and from what we've seen, we know that only Pakistanis can solve the problems of the Pakistanis because we understand our problems better than anyone else.
Yeah.
Culturally, geographically, and all the other lees, if you combine them, at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones, we'll need to step our game up and then solve those problems.
Yeah.
And our belief is very strict on the fact that there needs to be a grassroots change. So that's why most of our efforts are catered towards grade 3 and people who are students or participants who are in primary and secondary schools or middle schools, for example, because that's where we will see the change. Scientists these days, for some reason, are not focusing on fixing problems, or even if they are, then there's a huge brain drain where they're just going abroad and they're not coming back or contributing to the economy. So there are quite a few reasons. But there was one thing that one time we were meeting with this really exceptional gentleman, and he said something that stuck with me for a really, really long time. He said that right now the decision makers who are sitting on the seats will eventually go on to bigger, better things, or they'll just retire. But tomorrow, when these young children become the decision makers of tomorrow, you need to train them so that they can take the proper decisions when they're in those decision-making positions. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, he's absolutely right. We need to train the younger generation so that when they come on to the decision-making seats, then they take those decisions which are effective and which are advantageous for Pakistan and, of course, the greater global community as well.
Yeah. And if we're teaching students and with younger kids logical thinking and critical thinking and creative, sort of innovative, solution-based thinking, which is really what we will be needing going into the future. Look, I read somewhere that right now children in school will be working jobs that don't even exist right now. By the time they hit the workforce, they will be doing things and having careers which we haven't even imagined yet. And that kind of adaptability is something that we need to teach kids. So we can't just keep on doing the same old, times tables, reading from books, and we can't go into the future like that.
Absolutely right. Just to add on to what you've said, and you've raised another very important point. In the future, what we're going to see hiring is not actually going to be happening on what degree you have, but on what skills you have. So that's something very, very important. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to do the exact same thing. We're trying to teach children the skills of tomorrow. Sure, they can, and we encourage them to do O levels and A levels and then get a university degree and all that. That's fine, go for it. That's the mainstream way, which has always been accepted.
That's the system.
Exactly. But if you don't have the skills of tomorrow, then you're not going to be considered for any job. And that's the biggest issue. Just to add on to this, two really interesting things have happened fairly recently. One of the things that's happened is that Google has announced their own Google study certificates. I'm misremembering the name, but they've recently come across something called certificates.
Right.
Now, these are $600 certificates that are going to be in lieu of your degree. So you can either take a degree or you can take that $600 certificate and they're going to count it as equal. And that's what Google is doing. So they've slightly changed their direction already. Another thing something that's interesting that's recently happened is in the Nordic countries, so you have Norway, Finland, Sweden, all these other countries over there, they have the best education system in the world.
Yes.
What they've recently done is that they have scrapped all the different subjects in schools.
Really?
So they're not teaching subjects anymore. They're not teaching maths, they're not teaching physics, history, blah, 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 blah. They're not teaching any of that. What they're doing instead, they're only teaching case studies. And that's how they're teaching. So they're making problem solvers already. If I start teaching someone a case study, so they'll start thinking along those lines. All right, now I have a problem in front of me. How do I solve it?
Yeah, and you just use all the tools at hand. And you have all the tools, you're using all the tools at hand to do it. So by taking away the structure of this is physics, you are sort of allowing this expansion of thought, really. Like, I could use, poetry, or I could use art, and I can use whatever, physics also, to solve a problem. That's so cool. Nordic countries. So Zartaj, what other institutional support do you think that we need to be able to keep this momentum going? Like, I'm, for example, thinking of the planetarium, which I think is defunct and has been for a long time, and it was just such a wondrous place in my childhood. And I wish it could open again.
So planetarium, yes, someone else talked about it. I think I was at Sir Syed University this past Friday, and somebody mentioned planetarium, and I was like, yes, I remember it. The only spacey thing from my childhood.
Yeah. It's so magical.
The plane is still there. Yeah. And so this last year, I think I went to the US and I went to a very advanced sort of planetarium. And it was a space science. Yeah. I think it was, I'm forgetting the name. So it was a space museum. And, they had not a similar, but a much advanced setup where, you would be on a reclined seat and you could see all the planets and they were going. Yeah. With where we are going with all of this, I mean, I honestly feel that the single national curriculum that is being developed should address this. Yeah. We have all of this, even the curriculum that a couple of years ago, I saw the national curriculum that we follow in different provinces as well. It has everything. It has the learning outcomes and all. Yeah. What we feel is lacking is the training of the teachers. And that, Mina, is another whole area where we need to look at.
Yeah.
Teachers they just become teachers by studying from the same system without even thinking about the new methodologies that are out there. Leave some of the private schools apart. But then the majority is doing the same thing over and over again. Nobody's thinking of disrupting. The actual disruption has to come from the teachers. They've been doing this for over years and years. And I think teacher training is one thing that we strongly feel, besides inspiring the students. Now, Nehan and I cannot do everything, right? Or a couple of people will not be able to do. We need to have a ripple effect. We need to train more people to practice this religiously, to bring about this change. And as you mentioned, as Nehan was talking about, problem solvers, Finland is creating those. That is where this is truly a blended teaching and learning, scenario where you're giving them a project. And I remember that, we have there are some international competitions of robotics, and Destination Imagination is another program, an international program that was introduced in Pakistan. They don't talk about certain subjects. They talk about a theme, a unit, which combines all the subjects. And I think that approach is needed in our schools.
Yeah. Also, some very sort of question here, where I think that the perception sometimes is also that you have to have a certain set of skills to do coding, for example, or to kind of build a robot using your awesome Legos. Is that true? Do you have to necessarily be really good at math or physics, for example, to be a coder?
Not necessarily, Mina. All these skills can be learned, honestly. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you do need some logic, and I think all human beings are born with that logic. Yeah. And that analytical mind. I'm a firm believer of that. You just need to polish those skills, nurture those skills, and give them opportunities. Like, who would think of kids in Perth having this? What math and science have they studied? But they're really good at problem solving. Yeah. They're very good at coming up with solutions. Look at their teachers. Like, we were stuck with making some projects, where will we find this and how will we do this? They would always come up with a very creative solution with limited resources. So those people always have limited resources. With ample resources, there is no guarantee of creating something great, right?
Yeah. So for anybody watching who wants to get into robotics or do a bunch of coding, you can learn how to do it. It's really fun, and you don't have to be a math whiz or sort of computer genius to do that. So Zartaj, in sort of, closing-ish, do you feel like it's getting better for girls in STEM? Because it's traditionally been a very male space. But do you think that that's changing now?
Yes, I strongly think so, because when I was doing my software engineering, and I think I was, if not the only one, very few girls. And then I pursued my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineering program. I was the only one there, honestly.
And that's very scary. It's really, program. Wow, that's really daunting, because sitting there and everyone is just like, it's a girl, Did you feel like you had to work harder to prove that you could do it?
It is improving. You do see a lot of girls now in the engineering professions and all. But what is sad is there is no level of trust which is the same among the employers for the girls and for the boys. So there's a difference over there that you see. As I mentioned about the startup ecosystem, there isn't enough investor trust because of a lot of reasons. But yes, it is improving, I would say. But still, world over, not only in Pakistan, there are very few females. You're right.
Yeah, no, it is true. World, and sadly and ironically, the only way to improve that is by getting more girls into that arena and getting more girls into STEM, so that we can show that, we can do it too, and we're actually really good at it. Thank you so much, Zartaj and Nayan, for joining me today. This has been a fascinating, scintillating conversation. I'm dreaming of Mars. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Coffee Table. Bye now.